Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games, and I'm here with Joel and Adam, and we're doing another episode. I guess this is sort of our action movie, wuxia movie episode, but not wuxia weekend or anything like that. We're just sort of covering that genre of film. Today, we're talking about The Heroic Trio. This is a 1993 Hong Kong action film directed by Johnny To, with Ching Swee Tung as the action director, and it stars Anita Mui, Michelle Yeoh, and Maggie Cheung as a trio of modern-day heroes. I want to give the IMDb breakdown because I always sort of incorporate that. This time I couldn't because I didn't think it was quality enough, but I thought it would be interesting for conversation. Their breakdown of it is, well, one tough woman with an invisible robe has stolen 18 babies for her powerful master. Two other tough women and cops try to stop her. So I thought it's not wrong, but it's also like the worst way you could pitch the movie to anybody. And it doesn't connect it to the title at all because they're a heroic trio. They're not heroic opponents. Do you know what I mean? So So I was a little miffed by that, and I thought I'd include it here. I also want to say before we start, the action choreographer Ching Swee Tung, he's the guy who made Duel to the Death, Witch from Nepal, which I also want to cover here at some point because that's a really interesting movie, but also the Swordsman films, including Swordsman 2. And also like later, like Sorcerer and the White Snake, and forget the name of the movie, Naked Weapon or something like some kind of steamy, semi-erotic action thriller in the early 2000s that actually starred Cheng Pei Pei, believe it or not. But or at least she had a role in it. She wasn't. I don't think she was the lead actress, if I recall. But anyways, I think the action choreography, you really see that here. And so I thought maybe we could start with that, which is just that, this is kind of on the surface, maybe a corny superhero style movie, but the action is like anything that you would have seen, I think, in any of the movies that I listed by Ching Swee Tung. And I didn't know if you guys had any thoughts on that, of what you saw.
Well, yeah, you can kind of see like superhero, like Batman, etc. influence in this. I think it's not just the setting; it's the way the characters interact with the setting, their motives, the costuming, most certainly. But it's clear they're using things like Lightfoot style, and there's an interesting connection to the past, to the eunuch, and the way they got their training. There's also like one member of the trio, what was it, the heroic thief, whatever she was called. Is very modern in her approach. Like she's got her own bat cycle and weapons and things.
Oh, thief catcher.
Yeah, thief catcher. That's her. First of all, I loved her. Immediately when you were right, I was destined to love this movie, man. I was immediately thinking about how I could translate it into Lone Wolf Fist. I was like, oh man, he knew Brendan, he knew exactly what my candy was. It's this thing. So yeah, it's really entertaining. But yeah, no, I think you're right there. I think the action choreography, and it's interesting because it's very like wire fu, but also there's a couple of scenes in this movie that really threw me back to the Michael Keaton Batman, like especially when he's climbing the tower at the very end. And that one guy comes kung fu flipping out to punch him and fight him before Jack Nicholson's Joker, because the Joker isn't really much of a physical threat to Batman. So they just have like one super powered kung fu guy that just happened to be working for the Joker. And I don't know, it reminded me of that scene a lot. Except instead of it being this weird discordant thing that just kind of came out of nowhere, it was like, no, the whole movie's got that tone. It's cool.
Yeah, the choreography in this movie was great, and it definitely, I found it interesting. You're talking about it as a superhero type movie. In some ways, it's more like a superhero movie than most superhero movies, just because there is so much melodrama to this to an extent, and stuff like. It's like when they make comic book movies, the whole kind of soap opera element tends to get left out, and it just becomes kind of an action movie. And this had all those kind of elements you get in an ongoing comic book.
I think, and again, I guess we can get into this topic too, but I think one of the reasons why it works is there's such a visual vocabulary in Hong Kong films for both action and drama at the same time. Like they know how to weave those two things together. And I feel like, again, it's just my opinion, but like when I watch a lot of American superhero movies, and I don't watch a lot of them, I don't feel that they connect those things as tightly and as elegantly. And so
Yep.
here it really works. You have this like amazing fight sequence where they're feuding over something, and then there's something emotional happens, and it's fully believable. And so you're having these character arcs within the fight sequence. And to your point about superhero movie, my question about this film, and again, it often gets described as one or the other, but is this a superhero movie or is this a modern day wuxia movie where the wuxia characters are wearing masks? And because I mean, like, how would you guys categorize it, or does it have to be categorized?
I almost want to like. It kind of feels like a superhero movie where they got their powers from ancient kung fu. To me, like that's where I'm coming down on it.
A lot of superhero characters are martial artist characters anyway. I mean, even like the Dark Knight movie version of Batman went off and trained to be a martial artist. But yeah, I mean, the thing too, I feel like these walls people put up, it's like when you go back and watch a ton of old wuxia movies, it's like they draw from so many elements.
Yeah.
You were talking about drawing from elements. I feel like putting a wall between superhero movies and wuxia movies, it's like wuxia is a very pulpy genre that grew up alongside superhero movies. And I feel like superhero comics have always borrowed from martial arts stories, and martial arts stories have always borrowed from superhero stories. This is just so much more explicit in drawing on superheroes than that wuxia usually is.
Yeah, for me, I find like, and I've thought about this a lot every time I watch it, and I sometimes have to, like when I first saw it, I thought it was kind of a superhero movie. That was sort of my primary take. And the more time that's passed, the more I think it's primarily, I think, a wuxia movie set in the modern era that draws on superhero tropes, and so or sees connections between wuxia and superhero and makes them clear to the viewer. But I feel like so many of the tropes are like these deep wuxia tropes. Like you have like all of the Chinese martial arts stuff is in there, all of the cultivation stuff is in there, but also the eunuch and this sense of a corrupt empire. Like it's modern day, and they somehow got this corrupt empire trope into the setting in a kind of ingenious way. Like this eunuch is apparently trying to, restore an empire that's or maybe some kind of shadow empire. It's a little bit unclear. Like there maybe they're the remnants of the dynasties, and so this is just some later dynasty that exists in the shadows. But whatever it is, it's brilliantly done. Like I really I love how it connects all that. And in previous viewings of this, I've always seen fairly substandard transfers. I think the first time I saw it was the Miramax dub, probably, which is very different. Like I think some of the music is different. I think some things have been completely cut. The character, the what is it? The thief catcher, her nickname, which was supposed to be like mercenary, gets shortened to Mercy, I think, at one point, which completely changes the name, the nature of the character. I can't remember if that was the Miramax version or just another dub version, but the point is I never saw how beautiful this film was in terms of how it was shot. And even when I saw it, it wasn't crisp like it is in this what was this, a Criterion Collection version?
Yes.
Which surprised me, because this is generally, whenever I've talked with people about this movie, they kind of discuss it like it's like very mid, to use a modern term that I don't like, or very sort of schlocky kind of, run of the mill. Huh?
No, Armageddon is part of the Criterion Collection.
Okay, so now I feel
worse.
There's
an early entry in the Criterion Collection. Okay. But no, I take your point. That's such an outlier.
But I guess my point is, my estimation of the movie has risen the more I've seen it. Like it was one of these movies I used to be embarrassed to say I liked, almost, because I mean it's not like it's not a prestige wuxia or Hong Kong action film. Do you know what I mean? Some
movies you can get away with saying that you like in mixed company, and everyone's opinion of you generally rises. And some, like this one, or like previous versions of this one, I suppose, you'll say, "Oh, I love that movie," and that certain chunk of who you're talking to will just be like, "Oh, and they're like immediately you just feel
Yeah.
your social standing draining
Yeah,
in
no,
their
that's
eyes.
happened to me multiple times, like online in threads and stuff, and just even in live person discussions,
Yeah,
where
and
you,
they act like that opinion somehow makes them better than other people. It's like, ah, look, dude, I'm sorry, it doesn't.
Well, this
oh,
movie
go
is
ahead.
total pulp, but it is really quality pulp.
Yeah,
I really like this movie.
Quality pulp.
Yeah,
I love it.
it's one of those movies where you get like every emotion over the course of the evening, which
Yeah.
I really like that, and it's done all very artfully. It's not like even like the flashback sequence when she's hanging off the cliff there. I was like, oh my god, this is because again, it didn't look that way when I saw it the first time. It looks way better. I don't even know if that was in the Miramax version, but I have like another one that's like I think a Korean version of that it came like a package, like you got both. But after I saw this on Amazon, I ordered the Criterion version because I was like, I want to have this, physically, because I think that if this comes off, I'm not going to be able to see it at this level of quality again. So, yeah, I thought but yeah, again, just back to the point that we were discussing, I think that it's very open to interpretation how to classify this film. But I think it's whatever it is, it's very interesting that they combined the wuxia and the superhero tropes. I think of the way they did, and I think I like that it kind of leans, I think, more heavily into the wuxia in terms of like tone and vibe, and
Well,
that's
and
kind
in
of
reference too, like you were talking about the eunuch earlier, that's like something that if you don't watch wuxia, you're just gonna be like, who the hell is this dude?
yeah, yeah,
I will say though, to go on the superhero side, like the whole thing with the scientist, where she's with the
yeah,
Oh
scientist and
yeah,
she's infiltrating to steal the invisibility suit that he's developing.
that is
That is
very,
so
yeah.
superhero
Well,
comic book.
and one of my go-to descriptions of this movie, I don't know why I always say it reminds me of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the live action film, which is not a movie I like, but there's something reminiscent about the feel
This
of that movie,
this
this one.
uh, Someone that used to read the original TMNT comics and used to play the role-playing game back in the 80s, I could totally see this entire story happening in the
Yeah,
TMNT universe. It would just seamlessly fit in there.
yeah. Most of my knowledge of TMNT comes from the role-playing game or the live action
Yeah,
movie.
it's a good
Uh,
game, by the way.
it was. It was
it
if
is.
the character creation, but otherwise a good.
Well, yeah. Okay, I'll give you. It was one of the first things I played, so my quality
Well,
on mechanics was
also,
not great at
I
the
had to say, people bitch about that now. Back then, we did not mind spending 3 hours making a character and then having to revise the character
time.
after we made various changes. It was not that was considered part of the fun for us back then, I think. So
Well,
Yeah, I
that's
think
a
I made
Sabina
like
game,
50.
isn't it?
I made 50 characters for that game. I would just sit around
yeah,
making characters for it as a
yeah,
kid.
that's what I did because I
Yeah,
hardly
that's
ever I only got to play it like 6 or 7 times maybe, but I had the book, and so you'd a lot of times when you couldn't play, I did the same thing with the Batman, the Batman role playing game. I could never find anybody to play it, so I would just make characters and make little adventures or whatever, and they
Yeah,
go off
and
in
I
the
should
deeper.
Yeah, and I should mention to listeners here, the tone of the original black and white comic and the RPG was darker than when it became a Saturday morning cartoon. So, basically, I was comfortable taking my TMNT RPG book to school until that cartoon came out, and I'm like, all right, I'm never being seen in
Well,
public with this again.
well, we should probably talk about the tone because when I recommend, again, there's some really dark stuff that happens in this movie, and I always kind
Yeah.
of forget about that between viewings, and then so I always recommend it as, oh, it's like a fun kind of whimsical thing, and then you're watching it, you're like, oh yeah, this scene happens, and I kind of blocked it out of my mind or forgot about it,
Yeah, I
and
got no
so
warning. This is my first time
yeah,
seeing this film, so I'm just watching it.
I almost sent you a warning last night because I actually the first so just to
I'm
let
glad
people
you
know.
didn't, to be
Yeah, no,
honest.
it's better if you
I
don't.
would
Yeah,
have diminished the effect, and I would be a less honest review.
That's what I decided on, but I also thought, oh man, are they going to be like, what the hell, Brendan? Like, so it was one of those
I just,
things.
I just
I'm an
hate hearing
adult.
those warnings
Yeah.
at the beginning of movies, like, okay, there's going to be this and this and this is going to happen in the movie, and I'm
Oh,
like,
Yeah.
let
So
me get triggered, man.
spoilers, if you don't want to be, if you don't want to know what's going to happen. But there's a scene where Maggie Cheung abducts a baby from the nursery. I think she does it in hopes of attracting what's her name? The Ching character, the Invisible Woman, who's been stealing the babies because they used to belong to like the same group basically. But all three of them show up at the same place and kind of fight over this baby. And the baby ends up getting like its head gets cut. I think the back of its neck gets stuck on like a bolt or something. Nail.
Yeah.
And it's bleeding heavily. And then Anita Moy's character, Wonder Woman or Tung, takes the baby to the hospital. And up until that point, you're still kind of thinking, well, this is a movie where the babies all survive, and like they've done crazy things with babies, so this is not going to happen. And then the baby dies, and that's not even the first. That's not even the only baby that gets killed in the movie. So
it's weirdly foreshadowed too by the opening scene with the real estate agent when they're looking at the house where he keeps stepping on a board with a nail on it.
Yeah. I didn't realize that was some grim foreshadowing. I thought he was just a goofy clown. That guy was the harbinger of
that was the content warning right there.
Yeah. But, So it's very dark, but that darkness does give it this emotional resonance that I don't think the film would have without it. And I will say that's a very disturbing scene. I find that scene the first. You
see a lot of bloody baby head after that. Like it's not like gratuitous, but it's enough to really like it's grim. Yeah. And it's good. You know what? This movie is willing to take itself that seriously. Good. I'm glad they killed that baby. Wait, don't quote me on that. Nobody quote me.
It was a good choice in terms of storytelling. Do you know what I mean? And also, it's something that you don't normally see movies kind of go in that direction. You always feel like, like every once in a while you do, but I mean, you always have a sense of like all this crazy stunt work and recklessness that they're engaged in with the babies isn't going to have any actual danger to it. And so that really, once they do that, you realize that it's kind of like the thing in Game of Thrones where once they kill what's his name, the guy Ed Stark or whatever his name was, Ned Stark.
I literally never watched.
Before that, it's the first episode when they throw a kid out a window.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, thank you.
That's when you're like, oh, okay, that's what this show is like.
So,
well.
You just realize that like any outcome would be possible.
And that's what you want in a show, right? You can actually get emotionally invested in like, are these kids going to be okay after that point? Because you don't know. It's up in the air.
Well, and it adds complexity to the characters because the thief catcher, the Maggie Cheung character, she's like this sort of renegade, playful, kind of doesn't follow the rules and is like always. She's kind of got like almost a I don't know. She's got like a clumsy quality to her.
Yeah, she's got a devil may care attitude. She's reckless.
She's reckless. But then that becomes quite serious when her recklessness leads to the death of the baby, and then she kind of has to deal with the aftermath of it. So it's even though like the movie and the movie isn't like one of these films that like delves deep into character but it's very much sort of the plot has to happen, so this happens and that happens, but it just gives the characters a little bit more complexity, I think.
It does.
When you're dealing with pulpy, broad characters, having something like a dead baby on their conscience is good. It's not you want less subtlety when you're dealing with this kind of pulp.
That's important. It's not subtle, but it's effective.
Well, I think your comparison, Adam, of like doing this like comic book melodrama, that's a really good comparison. Everything's heightened,
Yeah, like I said, because comic book, like actual comic books, supposed to say Marvel movies or something, have so many of these kind of elements, like like Spider-Man dealing with his relationship with Mary Jane, and his sick aunt and stuff like that. There's like those things kind of get pushed to the side when you're doing a 2-hour movie usually. But this reveled in all that stuff. The husband.
The husband's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I also love that it's a coin flip whether or not he gets to recover, but it's not a coin flip about whether or not he was committed to what he was doing there and his wife. Like he's like, no more secrets, no more tears. We're in this together, babe.
That was a nice moment in the movie. I like that move.
Yeah, I like it.
And Dark Knight totally ripped this movie off with the thing where
100%.
Batman has to decide, is he going to save his love, or is he going to drive off and deal with it? That's like, this is just the Dark Knight is a shallow ripoff of this movie. I'll say
100%.
Well, and what was interesting was he was kind of the one that made that decision for her, because he's the one.
Yeah,
you know.
That was great. I really liked the relationship between those two characters. It was very effective. I think that's one of the reasons this movie works.
And I know also there wasn't just that first baby death that we talked about, but there's a scene later, and they're not babies, they're children, but the eunuch is trying to find and raise the next emperor, and I guess all he has to go on is birth signs, so he's abducting every child that was born under a certain star or whatever, and so
it's like he's weeding through all of them to be, which was like the one we get the dead baby where it's like, oh, you're being too noisy, you know.
He just kills the baby.
You're the bad baby. You're disqualified. Boom.
But then what he does is when they get older, he kind of shackles them and feeds them human remains, basically. And it's just turning them into these savage animals. And when the heroic trio get there, the Maggie Chung character just takes out some dynamite and is like, we have to blow them up. Like in the other one, the other one, her heart is soft and she doesn't want to do it. But she's like, look, what is the outcome of this going to be? These kids there's going to be like 8 of these eunuch type characters, you know, instead of 1 if we let them grow to adulthood. What it reminded me of is the baby orc argument that you always had in RPGs.
Yeah, dude. But I love that argument because it reveals the ethical core of a given character, and different characters can have very different takes on it. Like, I've had characters that were very soft-hearted about it, and then I had a elven character, a wood elf character, that just threw a bomb directly into their campfire and just walked away like it was nothing. Because there's different characters that have different takes on whether or not it's moral to do that. That's wonderful. And everyone makes it a problem in the real world. It's like, no. It's a problem for the elves, not for us.
Yeah, I was more surprised by that than the earlier baby death we talked about, just because, it was surprising that baby died early in the movie, but it was like having one of the protagonists deliberately kill a bunch of babies. I was like, wow,
and it's the same
protagonist. I really didn't see that coming.
The interesting thing, the protagonist who's inadvertently caused the death of the baby deliberately caused the death of these ones. So it was interesting that it's the same character.
She has clearly completed her moral arc. She's cool with the baby killing.
Don't let her hold a baby is the lesson of the movie.
Yeah, not the motherly type. I also like that whenever they throw the dynamite at them and then like you see the one like urinate in terror. It's like, man, they're really humanizing these monster kids before they murder them. Thanks, movie.
Yeah, the movie definitely does things like that. But I think what they were trying to emphasize was that she's making a very dark choice in that moment. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not like, again, and I think that's one of the things that kind of, not only does it make it, I mean, I guess it's a little less wuxia too, but it definitely makes it a little less superhero where, you know, you don't expect the hero to, maybe in recent years, like post 2000,
this is a 90s movie. Yeah. Comics were pretty dark by the time this movie.
I guess that's true.
We were at the height of grim dark comics at this time.
But again, just as somebody who doesn't read comics but watches movies, I wouldn't have expected that in a film like this. I would have expected, you know, that they save the kids and reform them or whatever.
This movie was. I worked in a comic book store in the 90s. This movie was mild by 90s comic book standards.
Okay. Yeah, it was like, I think this exact same year or like a year or so prior, they had a character whose whole plot arc was he was injected with the AIDS virus, and he was going to beat up the people that injected him with AIDS. Image was a weird. Image was a really weird. They also did the Max, where, oh god, what was the
that
Max about?
That was a 90s comic. That one.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what it was. It was like he had a weird silvery costume. Crap, what was his name? Shadow something? I can't remember. Everything was Shadow something or other back then.
Yeah, anytime I ever tried to get into comics, I'd read like 1 or 2 issues, and I just couldn't keep up with the demand of having to follow the story.
Yeah.
Like for the rest of my life. Like that was the part that I didn't like, I think, about it. It felt like a lifetime commitment to be a fan of a comic
It kind of does, yeah.
I had a lot of friends that were comic book collectors, so I was never actually a serious comic book collector, but I would just read comics over at friends, or they'd be like, "Oh, you've got to read Swamp Thing" or something like
Swamp
that.
Thing was good.
I was a secondhand comic book fan.
Yeah, I still have what's that movie? The big one that was like it was made into a movie in the mid 2000s, and everybody says it's like the best comic or graphic novel.
What, Watchmen?
Watchmen. I still have that in wrapped plastic because a friend of mine gave it to me and said, "You had to read
You
this."
never looked at it.
I
That is good, actually.
I've heard that. I've
no
heard
commitment.
That.
Read it and you're done.
I know, I've heard that, but again,
that's
that just
nice.
It just shows how I'm not built for comic book reading.
Yeah, I don't know if someone who isn't a comic book fan would get as much out of Watchmen as people that are comic book fans. Like, I mean, I understand when people have like a high opinion of it. So
that was one of the first comic books I ever read. So
but I don't know, like because I've reread it several times. It's a really quick read if it makes you feel better, Brendan. If you ever do want to try it out, but I've read it several times, and I got to tell you, the more I've like versed myself in comic books, the bigger an impact Watchmen has on me when I reread it. I'm like, oh, I get what they're doing here.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a lot of balancing of like. Because the actual placement of the art is really important and all that. It's a really fantastic.
I mean, the thing about Watchmen is that Alan Moore's goal was to do things that could only be done with a comic book.
With a comic book.
It's like the way he set up the story, the way he sets up the... That's why anyone attempting to make a movie out of Watchmen is an idiot.
Well, they got
the movie wasn't good, I take it? The movie was not good?
No, it's terrible.
I don't know. The thing about the movie is individual elements are really good, but like, overall, like it's just what was the point of this? It's like trying to make a movie out of the Mona Lisa. Like, what are you doing?
Terry Gilliam got put in charge of making a movie of it in the late '80s, and he worked on it for a few months, and then his conclusion was, okay, in order to make this a movie, I have to take everything that makes it good out of it and just make it into the typical kind of comic book story that it's not trying to be. And so
which is what it did.
Yeah,
exactly what the movie did. So,
and I guess we haven't talked about the actors and actresses yet either.
Oh man, we should too.
Yep. So this is really a vehicle for Michelle Yeoh, Anita Mui, and Maggie Cheung as a trio. And I think that's a really good mix. I think that they all bring something interesting to the table. They all feel distinct. They don't have similar personalities or appearances or
the look,
just general
the moves,
vibes.
They feel like very distinct, like superhero types, which really feeds into my superhero opinion of the film.
But yeah, I think that's the real thing that sort of gets you to see the movie in the first place, is the three of them starring together. And so I think they all do a great job. I think this is where Joel was going, and I think I probably agree with him. I think Maggie Cheung kind of steals the show a little bit in terms of the charm level. She just kind of
who steals it? You said
Thief Catcher, the tall one.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
She something about her personality kind of stands out. And I don't know. She does this in a lot of movies that she's in. She just kind of draws the attention to her. I think in New Dragon Inn it was very similar.
She just swaggers into every scene, then absolutely steals it.
Yeah.
She's not a thief catcher; she's a scene catcher. Bam.
I mean, in Dragon Inn, she was there, and Bridget Lin is in it too. And Bridget Lin is this amazing actress, and I always remember Maggie Cheung in that film because she just has so much personality on screen. And the other actresses were great too. And again, Michelle Yeoh I think is bringing more of the action. Her character is a little bit more reserved, anyways. But and Anita Mui brings not only the vocal performance on the soundtrack, but she brings kind of more of she's kind of like the stable central character that is, who we're kind of supposed to share her feelings. I think she's the one who we're supposed to most connect.
She's the audience POV big time. Yeah. Again, you know it because she's the one with a stable romantic relationship in it that we actually like.
They also introduce her very early. We have the early scene at the hospital where she shows up, and that she's
in the opening scene.
Well, she is in the opening scene too. You're right. The buying the house scene.
And so
I actually kind of like her outside of her superhero costume more than in it. I like in the last scenes where she takes the mask off. I think that's like the point where I'm like, okay, that's what I wanted to see with this character the whole time.
okay,
Because I don't know, the personhood of her is just really charming. Like that opening scene is great. Like you immediately fall in love with that married couple, right? Um,
Yeah.
they still got great chemistry together, and that chemistry informs the whole film. They both have like their own heroic little parts to play. It's really cool. It's a fun dynamic that is a good solid centerpiece of the whole experience.
yeah, and to the point that you made earlier too, Joel, I like that the Maggie Chung character uses like firearms, like shotguns and
Yep.
explosives, and and the Michelle Yeoh character, I think she's a little bit more hand and fist, but she also has some weapons that she uses, and she's got the invisibility cloak, which apparently can kill you. And the Anita Moy character, what does she have? The
Yeah, she's a
uh,
little throwing star things.
yeah. But you know, they all had interesting weaponry. Again, that's kind of why my mind went to wuxia. I think is like all of the different. But then you also have the invisibility
Yeah.
cloak, which is
Well,
very,
and
very
having
superhero.
distinct like powers and weapons and such like and styles, that's a very superhero thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is there is so much blend between the genres. It's hard to tell where the one end and the other begins.
Yeah.
I'm coming around to Adam's outlook on this as this 1 hour podcast draws on.
The
Oh,
other
I feel like we've covered so much. This is just like the movie. The movie is like just this tiny little film.
an hour and 28 minutes. This
Yeah,
movie.
it's
It's
really-
packed.
It
That's
is.
something. It's like when you watch a typical American superhero movie, it's like they're stretching one issue of a comic out to 2 hours. This is like, oh, I just read a pile of comics. So-
Yeah, and the great part is I feel like I read the first comic, skipped an issue, read 7 non-sequential comics, and the final issue. And it's great. That's exactly how you read comics, and that's exactly how I want to experience them as a movie.
yeah.
So one of the reasons I like Buckaroo Banzai so much, by the way. If you don't get the joke of that movie, you're not a comic book lover.
Now, one of the other actors I thought was interesting was Anthony Wong as the Guardian character, the one who like can't be killed by normal weapons. He's
That
kind
guy
of a
was
silent.
bad.
Yeah, he's a silent figure in the film, and he's been you'd recognize him if you saw him in other. Sometimes in recent years they've kind of had him play a lot of like master type characters, you know, and like sort of he's older now, but
He's a great physical presence in this film. Also, I love that he kind of rides that line. Like a lot of the movie has a weird balance of comedy and a strange, brutal sense of humor, and he's like right at the center of that. Where he's like his gag is he loses fingers in every scene. It's hilarious.
He loses his fingers and he kind of takes it in stride, which is I think what makes it interesting. You know, he doesn't he doesn't. He doesn't get bent out of shape when it happens. He just moves on. But yeah. So the other thing too is the music. I think the music, and again, that's one of the other reasons why I tend to think of it as a wuxia movie. Is that opening song is like this galloping wuxia sounding, music. And it's got a real interesting melody. I was listening to it over and over again last night on my ride to pick up my wife. I just put it on a loop, and I listened to different versions because this version, and again, it's sung by Anita Moy, is very. I don't know what her range is, but it's very low. It almost is like a masculine sounding female voice. But there's other versions where it's higher, and so I was listening to like how it sounded in different registers.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I like whenever a piece of music is versatile enough that it can do that. Not all of them are. Some of them are kind of set where they need to be. But yeah, that'd be interesting. I gotta hunt down other versions of this now because it's a real good little piece of music. It gets your heart pumping.
It's got the drums, and then it's got that drone drum. There's like a drum in there that's like that keeps getting hit. That's like a low note that almost bends a little bit. Do you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what instrument it is, but it really adds to the music. And then she's singing this this melody that's really strong. It's like a strong melody, but it's got I don't know what the scale is, but to me it sounds kind of like a vaguely Middle Eastern scale. Do you know what I mean? It's got like it's definitely it's I figured out the melody on the guitar the other night, but I didn't bother to figure out what scale it was. But the intervals were very interesting. Do you know what I mean? It's a very the intervals were. And it's also possible I wasn't hearing all the notes if she was using any microtones or anything like that.
Oh yeah.
but yeah, I think that it's one of the best opening pieces of music for a movie like this. And as you were saying, there's also other music throughout the movie that's equally engaging, including
Yeah.
apparently London Bridges falling down.
Yeah, they're just singing that in one scene. Well, I mean, but that's kind of a song about like controlled demolition, which is what that
Yeah.
character is all about. So I think that's what they were going for, you know? Or maybe it was a Falling Down. Right? Was Falling Down out at this point? I think Falling Down was a little later.
What, the Michael Douglas movie?
Yeah.
I
I
don't
think it was the
would've
same
been
year.
around.
I think they came out in '93. I could be wrong.
Oh my God! If that's the case, that's the weirdest coincidence.
You know what? I'll look it up while we're talking because I don't want to do Falling Down wrong. But
Falling Down's awesome.
that was '93 as well. That was
Yeah,
'93.
it is.
There you go. It's just in the air, I guess.
But yeah, it does connect to her character, especially the way she would like kind of come in with like the dynamite and pluck it in her mouth, and just like it was a cigar.
I thought that was a cigar. God, I fell in love with that character as soon as she spat the end of that out. I was like, "Yep, marry me."
And then what she do? She throws it in a trash can and
Yep.
uses it to launch the trash can, and it's just
It's like it's very Looney Tunes, but I don't know. They pull it off in this movie. It's part of the movie's weird, wacky, violent sense of humor, and it's so charming. Like so few movies are bold enough to like go full on Looney Tunes, and this one is like, not only should we do it, we should make it kick ass. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for that kind of attitude. Like it takes a good amount of swagger to pull it off and not make it just clown shoes. And they did a pretty decent job, I think.
Yeah.
yeah. I don't
Also-
know why people look down on this movie. I don't understand the negativity it sometimes gets.
You think the
I have to
rubber
say-
skeleton monster in the last fight maybe could be why this movie gets mocked a little bit?
I mean, maybe, but that's also not that out of place for a film from that era, from this region. So
It's
I feel
pretty
like
comic booky. I will give it that.
no, it
I
is. But
got
I mean, the
Spawn
same
movie vibes
people
from
that
it.
look down on this movie would praise A Chinese Ghost Story, and that has a lot of similar.
Yeah,
type.
no,
Yeah.
this is straight out of Chinese Ghost Story, dude.
Yeah,
Like, if
it's
they were
probably
rapping
the same
during that
effects
fight, it
crew.
would've
I don't
been
know,
perfect.
but yeah, I don't know. I just am a little bit puzzled by the negativity sometimes.
But especially if they're gonna praise Chinese Ghost Story. I mean, Rubber Tongue
Yeah.
Monster, dude. Like, come
Yeah.
on, like
Yeah.
Taoist rap. Come on, you can't. Not in the same breath, dude.
No, exactly. So yeah, so I don't know, do we have anything else we wanted to cover on this? Was it
Just gonna say, I listen to Robin Law's podcast, and anytime he's talking about movies, he's always going on about Johnny Toe, and it's like I've never gone out of my way to look at Johnny Toe movies, but I'm like I really got to follow his advice and look at more Johnny Toe stuff after.
yeah,
this.
Johnny Toe. I think he was involved in a Moment of Romance.
He did, yeah, he directed that. I kind of called up the list, and he still makes movies.
I don't know
a
if he
couple of
did he
years ago,
direct it,
like
though, or
Robin
did
Law
he,
was raving about one of his movies from 2 years ago. So,
I don't know if he directed that one. I think he.
oh, okay.
Let me see if I can
Not
find it.
directed.
Hold on. Keep talking, and I'll try to find the information. 'Cause
Okay, I had the filmography open a second ago. Yeah, I've got it.
he
here.
produced
I
that
can-
one. He produced that one.
Produced it. Okay. Yeah, it felt tonally different. So I was like, oh, he did Moment of Romance because I reviewed that with you. I own that actually. So.
Oh, you know what
But
he
yeah,
did? He did the Barefoot Kid, the Mad Monk. He did the sequel to this movie.
I have Bigfooted Kid, and I haven't gotten to it because you made me watch Shaolin whatever first, which I really liked. But I'm going to get to that now.
That's definitely
you
the right order. But yeah, the Barefoot Kid is
Hang
good.
on.
Barefoot Kid is very
go.
good.
We're doing the sequel next, right? Because I really enjoyed
Yeah,
this.
and I'm not going to spoil anything about the sequel. I want you guys to go into it with an open mind, so I won't say anything about it. But I will tell you it's kind of a post-apocalyptic, so that's the reason
Right.
that was
I-
why I thought this might be of interest to you.
As I recall,
I'm on for the next one.
Yeah, as I recall, I was specifically asking you for inspiration for my post-apocalypse hex crawl, and this is what immediately sprang to your mind. So
Yeah.
I'm already inspired just by this movie. I'm really looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, I figured this one would be usable too because it's even though it's not post-apocalyptic, it's got enough material that you could. You
Dude,
could
the
pull right
eunuch
into
plot is, that's got to go in the hex crawl.
Yeah.
Y'all gonna see an evil eunuch in the hex crawl now. Deal with it.
Yeah, I thought this was a good choice for what you were asking for. There's a couple of others. The The Blade is another one, I think, that's not set in the post-apocalypse in our time, but it's set in almost like a medieval post-apocalypse, like when Law and Order break down. I don't remember which dynasty it is, but it's much earlier period, and it's a remake of the One-Armed Swordsman, kind of. But
which movie is this?
I think it's The Blade. I believe I could have the title wrong.
The Blade.
Yeah, I think it's The Blade.
I have The Blade. You sent that to me because we were going to review it. We never reviewed it, and I didn't watch it because I was waiting until we reviewed it. So I have the Blade sitting on the shelf right here.
Is that the one with the black plastic case and like I think I remember sending that to you. But that's an interesting movie. And that might have stuff that you could pull on from because, again, it's sort of. Again, I would call it kind of medieval post-apocalypse,
Oh, damn, that looks cool, man.
Yeah, it's a really cool post.
Okay, you made the list, The Blade. I might actually be able to get a physical copy of that. That looks really sexy.
That one, I think you could still get those, and if you can, you should, because it's something like $10. Those aren't the most high-quality DVDs, and Adam may find out that for himself.
I'm not the most high-quality viewer.
And he's had it for years now, but if it's still available, it was one of my favorite purchases because it was affordable and it was kind of. My impression was it was maybe kind of like a POD version of a DVD or something. I'm not sure.
My version of Angel's Egg is something like that, where it's just like this mass-produced cheap thing. And I gotta tell you, even like the mass-produced cheap version of Angel's Egg is breathtaking. So
the Blade has some of the most interesting one-armed swordsman fight choreography I've ever seen on camera. It reminds me a little bit of the Return of the One-Armed Swordsman, not the Return, the new One-Armed Swordsman with David Chang, in its approach, but way more intense. So all right, so yeah, I guess closing thoughts on the movie. Do we have any?
What's our recommendation on this movie? What's our closing thoughts / recommendation or not? Let's start with Adam.
Yeah, go Adam.
Okay. Yeah, I highly recommend this movie. I mean, obviously you've got to be into, like I said, it's very pulpy. You've got to be into either wuxia or superheroes as an entry point to get into it. If you hate both of those things, I don't know why you're listening to this podcast and got through a whole episode, but I feel like listeners of this podcast will probably really enjoy this movie. It is, like I said, it is goofy in parts. It's melodramatic, it's serious in parts, it's tragic in parts. It's just a really fun mix of stuff. And I really loved it. So I give it a high recommendation.
Yeah, and I recommend it too. I would say to anybody that's seen it in the past, if you are on the fence of seeing it again, consider watching the Criterion Collection version because I think that really does elevate it. It looks different to me. It just didn't. It's sort of like the time when I first saw The Bride with White Hair in like a good Blu-ray version, and it was like, oh my God, this looks. It always looked good, but it looks so much better. And the same with Swordsman too. It's very, very crisp, and also, if you only saw the Miramax version, definitely give the Criterion version a check. And if you haven't seen it before, and you're interested in either superheroes or wuxia, this is a good sort of blend of the two genres. Joel?
Okay, so in a lot of cases, a film like this, I feel is kind of divisive because of how wildly it swings between the extremes of its emotional character. Like sometimes it's really goofy, sometimes it's really surprisingly dark. And so with a movie like that, a lot of times I'd be reserved in my who I'd recommend it to. I'd be like, okay, people that like the stuff I like, go watch this. But here's a weird example where the people that don't like the stuff I like, people that are against that, I'd recommend it for them too. I think this movie will expand your horizons. I think you should watch it to challenge yourself because there's a world of very strange media out there that if you shelter yourself from it, you are missing out on some of the coolest, most interesting and it's inspirational stuff you're ever going to see. So if you don't like wuxia and you don't like pulp and you don't like serious stuff or goofy stuff at all, go watch Heroic Trio. It's a really good entry to the kind of gonzo stuff that we like. And it's digestible, it won't take up much of your time, and it really has a lot of value to say for itself. So, yeah, even if I wouldn't recommend this, I recommend it. and I do recommend it for the record.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think this does really show off like something like the eunuch trope. This really like it shows it off in a way that's very cool and stylish. The actor who plays him, he was in Swordsman too. He played Ren Wujing, the evil stepfather in the movie. Remember the guy with the hook?
He kills his role.
His name is Yen Shi Quan, and he does an excellent job in this role. He's terrifying. He's got like a very terrifying appearance in the movie. And he's been in like every movie in existence, I think.
There was a very big Trouble in Little China energy to the end of this movie that made it very charming.
Well, at some point we should watch Warriors from Zhu Mountain. I forget the
Warriors.
I just tried watching that the other night. I wasn't feeling well. I watched the first hour of it, I was loving it, but I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch this when I feel better.
That movie is legendary. I really want to see it. So
based on the first half hour, I'm really looking forward to getting back to it. So
that's one of those few movies that before I knew Brendan, I knew the name of that movie. There's like
that one has a little bit of currency. That one is, and also they did a not quite a remake, but they did like another version of it in the early 2000s, and I think that also gave it a little bit of a boost in terms of recognition. But Big Trouble in Little China, being inspired by it, really gave it a lot of oxygen, in the U.S. at least.
Should do that soon. I mean, maybe Executioner's next, and then Warriors from Zhu Mountain.
All right, so we'll wrap it up there, and until next time, we will talk to you later.